Zimbabwe has officially abolished the death penalty almost 20 years after the last hanging took place. President Emmerson Mnangagwa, who faced the death penalty himself in the 1960s, approved the law this week after a bill passed through Parliament. He also has used presidential amnesties to commute death sentences to life in prison. Zimbabwe has about 60 prisoners on death row, and the new law spares them. Now, the country last executed someone in 2005, partly because at one point no one was willing to take up the job of state executioner. Amnesty International has described the law as a beacon of hope for the abolitionist movement in the region. Academic and Director of International Services for the Government of Zimbabwe, Richard Mahomva, joins us now for more. Mr. Mahomva, a very good new year to you, and thank you so much for joining us. Maybe let's give in a little bit of historical context. I mean, how has the death penalty been perceived historically in Zimbabwe, and what changes have occurred in public opinion leading up to this decision?
The fact that the country has been failing to get a hangman for over a decade is reflective of the extent to which it is a phenomenon that has not been traditionally accepted. But also we need to look at the history of the constitutional parameters of our country. That in the context of our new constitution, which was born in 2013 following the government of national unity, the clause on the right to life was emphasized, which is something that was absent in the previous constitution in the very explicit terms that it's currently lodged in the constitution, and many other fundamental rights. So it's quite clear that this is an issue that takes a constitutional historical backdrop, but at the same time also dovetails with the traditional societal perception about the so-called evils of this death penalty phenomena.
But what impact do you as a government anticipate the abolition of the death penalty will have on crime rates in Zimbabwe? How does the government plan to address some of the concerns about public safety?
So the starting point is that Zimbabwe is a country that generally has got a very low crime rate, because if you are to compare even the number of inmates that had been sentenced for the death penalty and do a regional sampling, a continental sampling, you'd find out that our figures were relatively low, that is 60, 59, 60 thereabout. So that speaks to the extent to which the law enforcement system is very efficient, and where the aspect of judicial sentencing only serves its rightful context of creating rehabilitation for criminals and not necessarily taking a very punitive direction that has got a dehumanizing effect. Because also from a global scale, you discover that at this point of more than 130 countries that have actually abolished that. So as a fundamental phenomenon of Zimbabwe's constitutional solidarity with the phenomena of adherence to human rights, this becomes a very welcome development.
I can imagine, but do you also believe, I mean, you speak of the comparisons within the region, do you believe that this move could sort of influence other African countries such as Egypt and Somalia and South Sudan in them being active retentionists and moving away from this way of justice?
Yeah, it's critical, because also there have been observed flaws around this system, where certain people have been suffered flaws of criminal proceedings in terms of their sentencing across the globe. So as part of modernizing the law and actually giving an absolute decolonial trajectory to how we are dealing with issues of criminal procedure juxtaposed with the inhuman conditions that come with a death sentence, I think this is going to motivate other countries to follow in that direction. It's only the modern thing to do. It's also the correct thing to do, because life is a God-given a thing, and it should actually be eliminated by God, or be in the control of God and not fellow human beings. Because the starting point is that, yes, someone may kill, and when we kill them, then the next question is, who else should then be killed after that process? So it actually kills that sense of the cycle of violence and its structural sense, which for me is a very acceptable and welcome.
So the 60 people in Zimbabwe who were facing the death sentence, did government give any support and have any conversations with the victims of the crimes in light of this change? Are there alternative justice mechanisms that are being considered?
Well, it's a new legal measure, and because it's a new legal measure, it means that judicial administrative processes are going to take course as guided by this particular statute. And of course, it simply means that when these sentences become ineffective, there are certain legal procedures that will come to course. So I think we should anticipate also interventions from human rights entities and also from the government, particularly through the Ministry of Justice, to actually initiate measures that actually cause those that had been previously sentenced with this now illegal provision to actually map the way forward as far as their new set of justice delivery is concerned.
Lastly, Richard, what's your government's long-term vision for justice and human rights in Zimbabwe following this significant change?
Well, the government of Zimbabwe is a government which was born out of a protracted liberation struggle, which was anchored on delivering human rights to our people. And this has actually been a key pillar and a benchmark of the government's operation. So going forward, I see this as part and parcel of an ongoing exercise of ensuring that all our laws are aligned with the Constitution, because there are new sets of rights that have also been put across, even in terms of the pillars of governance, such as transparency and transparency, accountability, and all these things that were not in the previous constitution. So we still have a long way to go to continue refining the law to ensure that it meets the relevant tests of our government needs. And previous, you would also note that we actually had the patriotic clause that had actually been put into the broader scope of the law to deal with issues of defaming the sovereignty of the state and many other things. So we're looking forward to the continued strengthening of the law in a way that responds to the immediate political, social, and economic interests of our people. And also, a few days ago, you would also recall that the process of the land tenure policy has also been put in place in tandem with Section 289, 290 of the Constitution. So more reforms to align the economic rights of our people, the social rights, and the political rights of our people should be anticipated.
All right, certainly a significant landmark change for Zimbabwe. Thank you so much for your time and for your inputs. That was the Academic and Director of International Services for the Government of Zimbabwe, Mr. Richard Mahomva. Now, we'll have more news for you after the break. Don't go anywhere.